Cartels rule with an iron fist. They control their ranks through fear while terrorizing the world around them. It's often brutal and bloody, from sicario boot camps where the strongest walk away with rocket launchers, to radical intellectuals rigging elections, and ex-special ops bodyguards seizing empires from the inside. And this is just the beginning. On today's episode of the Infographics Show, we'll meet the 10 most powerful and dangerous cartels on Earth. Number 10. The Cartel de Jalisco New Generation, or CJNG, is one of Mexico's deadliest syndicates, led by Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera Cervantes. It emerged in the early 2000s, born from chaos after a Sinaloa power vacuum triggered by the capture of Oscar Nava Valencia and the death of Nacho Coronel. What followed was nothing less than a brutal civil war. The Milenio Cartel, once loyal to Sinaloa, splintered into factions. One of them became CJNG, and it made its name in blood by assassinating 3 members of rival syndicate Los Zetas. The CJNG's name translates to the New Generation Jalisco Cartel, and they have completely changed the game in Mexico's underworld. As of February 2025, they were the first cartel to have a presence in all 32 of Mexico's states, either directly or through franchise affiliates embedded in other criminal organizations. Their sicarios are also some of the scariest and best trained of any gang out there. The cartel runs ranch retreats for new recruits where they go through violent hazing rituals to prove their worth, including cannibalism. If they survive initiation, new recruits are armed with state-of-the-art military tech, like drones and rocket launchers supplied by Colombian ex-guerrillas. Despite all of this, though, the CJNG still has amazing PR. They have an active presence on social media where they portray themselves as freedom fighters targeting corrupt cops and government officials. During the COVID-19 pandemic, they even took the time out of their bloody war with Los Zetas in Veracruz to donate toys to disadvantaged kids. As for what the CJNG actually do, it's almost easier to list what criminal rackets they don't engage in. Their finances took a hit in 2021 with the arrest of El Mencho's wife, Rosalinda, who was in charge of the syndicate's finances. But the cartel is still going strong, and it's estimated by some to be worth over $20 billion. Like most cartels, CJNG makes its fortune from the drug trade, but after expanding into Mexico's oil-rich heartland, it began raking in hundreds of millions by illegally tapping pipelines. They also run extortion rackets on farms across Mexico, and members have been implicated in a series of timeshare scams. And bizarrely, the CJNG have become notorious for avocado laundering, illegally taking over avocado farms and supply chains in order to launder their money. But those laundered avocados look like small potatoes compared to our next cartel. Number 9. Shing Wo is the largest and most influential of the Hong Kong triad gangs. While it was officially formed in 1930, the syndicate can trace its heritage all the way back to the Hongmen, a secret society way back in the 1600s. These ancient roots are still evident in the initiation ceremony, which involves incense and incantations and drinking blood wine. The Shing Wo exploded in numbers after World War II as the Chinese Civil War sent waves of people fleeing into Hong Kong. By recruiting from this group, the triad swelled from 15,000 members to nearly 70,000 during the 1950s. The Shing Wo make their money through prostitution, weapon smuggling, people smuggling, counterfeiting, illegal gambling, drugs, and protection rackets. One of their most unusual schemes was the minibus racket. Between 2006 and 2010, they extorted 30 municipal drivers, pulling in around 14 million Hong Kong dollars a year through protection fees. The Shing Wo were also thought to be behind the death of journalist Kevin Lau in 2014, who was killed by an unknown assassin riding a stolen motorcycle. As for their legitimate front businesses, they run bars, nightclubs, and casinos. They're also heavily involved in the film industry. Outside of Hong Kong, the gang has a strong foothold in the United Kingdom, where they are heavily involved in the trade of heroin and counterfeit goods. In South Africa, they were formerly involved in the illegal abalone trade, which accounted for an estimated $32 million of the syndicate's revenue in 2000. In Scotland and the Netherlands, they've even teamed up with the 14K, a rival gang to smuggle cigarettes. It's a perfect example of what makes Shing Wo so successful. They are ruthless against enemies, but pragmatic enough to do business with anyone when moving into new territory. In Australia, they supply heroin wholesale to Vietnamese and Romanian gangs who handle street distribution. In France, they partner with Turkish and Albanian mafias to keep the drugs flowing in. As long as there is money to be made, they don't discriminate. Today, Shing Wo is estimated to have more than 20,000 members worldwide. But our next cartel? They hide in places you would never imagine. Number 8. Most criminal gangs begin as protection for communities the police ignore or outright antagonize, but this next gang had a much more unusual beginning. It started as a university fraternity founded by a group of radical intellectuals that include a future Nobel Prize-winning author. The Black Axe is a Nigerian crime syndicate notorious for human trafficking and cybercrime. In Nigeria, they're part of what's known as the confraternities, secret societies born on university campuses that evolved into organized crime. The National Association of Sea Dogs, better known as the Pirates, was the first confraternity in Nigeria. It began in 1952, founded by author and playwright Wole Soyinka and 6 of his friends while studying at University College in Ibadan. The New Black Movement, or NBM, splintered off from the Pirates in the late 1970s. A decade later, the Black Axe broke away from the NBM, and ever since the two groups have tried, with mixed success, to distance themselves from each other. Like other confraternities, their roots were in anti-colonial activism, Pan-African solidarity, and self-determination. The Black Axe flag still reflects those ideals, an axe smashing through shackles, a symbol of resistance to colonialism. But don't let those lofty goals fool you. Just because they're university educated and most of the crimes happen in cyberspace, that doesn't mean they're a bunch of harmless nerds. The Black Axe wants its members to be just as physically tough as they are well-read in political theory. Much like the CJ&G, the Black Axe have an absolutely brutal initiation period where pledges are humiliated, drugged, and physically tortured. Those that make the cut and become true Axemen are taught how to fight not just oppression, but also members of other confraternities. They've been involved in violent and even fatal confrontations on university campuses all over Nigeria, but exact numbers are hard to find. It turns out when your gang has been on every major university campus for 40 years, plenty of other former members end up in politics and government, and many of them are more than happy to turn a blind eye to the syndicate's crimes. The Black Axe's structure draws on pre-colonial Nigerian religion. Initiates wear black robes, and the group's leader is even called a priest. But they are not confined to Nigeria. The syndicate now runs chapters across Europe. These smaller chapters all pay their dues to the group's headquarters in Benin City. Together, they have generated billions through money laundering, wire fraud, romance scams, and even the infamous Nigerian Prince emails. In 2022, Interpol arrested 75 Black Axe members in a money laundering scheme that spanned 4 countries and as many continents. The group has also been tied to election fraud, and in one case, politician Augustus Bamigo was caught emailing Black Axe members and even paying them $85,000 to secure votes in his favor. But compared to our next cartel, they just seem like some regular college nerds. Number 7. The Camorra, also called the Naples Mafia, has a long history. In fact, it is older than the country it originally came from. It's been operating in the region since the 18th century, before Italy was even a unified country. This gang emerged out of a power vacuum caused by the creation of the Parthenopean Republic, a short-lived autonomous state in Naples that was created after the French Revolution. They really started to expand their reach, though, after World War II. Huge portions of Europe had been destroyed during the war, and the region was economically devastated. The Camorra gave people a way to make some money in a time of social upheaval. Most of the syndicate's activity in that period was in contraband goods, like cigarettes that could no longer be acquired due to the war disrupting trade routes. Like the Sinaloa Cartel, the Camorra are a decentralized group of loosely related clans, so getting rid of them has been nearly impossible. The families that make up the Camorra mostly keep to themselves, and they manage their own territory. But families do clash with one another over conflicting interests. There was an attempt to unify the families back in the 70s to make it more like the Sicilian Mafia, but it was unsuccessful. Unlike the Sinaloa Cartel, though, the Camorra do a little bit of everything: drugs, extortion, human trafficking, smuggling, protection rackets, and, of course, violence against other gangs. On the legal side of things, according to a report published in 2007, the Camorra controls Naples' entire milk, fish, and coffee trade. They also own over 2,500 bakeries in the region. Due to government corruption starting in the 80s and 90s, they also run most of the waste management in Naples. As you can probably imagine, mobsters aren't the most stringent on following environmental safety protocol. As a result, there is now a massive illegal toxic waste dump 15 miles north of Naples City called the Triangle of Death. In addition to being decentralized and having diversified revenue streams, the Camorra also dabbles in youth outreach. With many of the old guard Camorra leaders either dead or behind bars, the organization has been actively searching for fresh blood. They recruit many of their new members from Neapolitan baby gangs, groups of teenage hoodlums who commit street-level crime, in the hopes of becoming made men. These baby gangs operate out of housing projects in the poorer parts of Naples. Most of them get started stealing and selling drugs to support their family. Through social media, they target teen boys for recruitment. Camorristi post messages and groom candidates. If the bosses see promise, then they test them, sometimes by ordering them to kill. If they fail, they'll be killed themselves. Once they prove themselves, the kids can very quickly rise up the ranks of the organization, leading to a phenomenon called paranza, where a Camorra capo is younger than the guys working under him. One crime boss who was shot dead in 2015, Emanuele Sibillo, was just 19 years old at the time. It might seem counterproductive to entrust a bunch of teenagers with the running of a criminal empire, but the attention that these baby gangs draw to themselves actually benefits the Camorra in the long run. According to ex-boss Pepe Miso, the young guns still answer to the old clan heads, and their wild behavior keeps police and the media distracted, while the real leaders run the show from the shadows. But imagine if they had the discipline and skills of our next cartel. Number 6. Next up is the 14K. We briefly mentioned them before, but that's because you can't really talk about the triads without talking about the 14K. The 14K triad was formed in 1945 after a Kuomintang lieutenant general fled Guangzhou for British Hong Kong during the Chinese Civil War. As for the name, the origin is still debated. Some say it comes from the 14 founding Kuomintang soldiers. Others claim it refers to Kowloon, where their old headquarters once sat at number 14. The 14K are a decentralized group of smaller gangs with shared goals, but no overarching leader. This really seems to be the way to go if you're looking to expand your syndicate into new territories, because the 14K have a foothold on basically every continent. In Australia, they control a large portion of the meth trade. In South Africa, they smuggle abalone. In Canada, they've joined up with local Vietnamese gangs in Toronto, as well as former members of the now-defunct Ghost Shadows gang. They work closely with the Sinaloa Cartel in Mexico. In New Zealand, they supply drugs to local biker gangs. And in 2008, they were responsible for the kidnapping of a Chinese family in Auckland. Like other triads, their main gig is narcotics, especially heroin. Starting in the 1950s, they were the main distributors of opium, which they would smuggle from Burma into Europe and North America. The 14K were instrumental in establishing smuggling routes in the Golden Triangle, the region between Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand, which produces the second largest amount of opium in the world. 14K are also involved in illegal gambling, loan sharking, human trafficking, extortion, counterfeiting, arms smuggling, prostitution, and cybercrime. Recently, 14K have been in the news because of what's called a pig butchering scam. It's a cryptocurrency scam built on trust. Scammers groom their target over time. They convince them to pour over their money into fake crypto, bleeding them dry, like fattening a pig before slaughter. These scams are run out of warehouses packed with low-paid workers, often people in debt to the triad. To avoid detection by the Chinese government, 14K sends them overseas. In 2019, for example, police in the tiny nation of Palau busted one of these internet scam sweatshops. The operation was huge, so many that the people who were arrested had to be deported since there was no room for them in the country's single prison. The man behind these operations is a guy called Wan Kwok Koi, aka Broken Tooth, who has been an active boss with the Macau 14K since the 1990s. Since being released from prison in 2012, Broken Tooth has allegedly been given a high-level position on the People's Political Consultative Conference, an advisory board within the CCP. But you'd much rather get on the wrong side of the 14K than the absolute maniacs in our next cartel. Number 5. Next on our list are Los Zetas, who might not be the most powerful cartel in Mexico anymore, but they are still the scariest. Los Zetas are primarily in the drug trade, but they also make profit through human trafficking, extortion, fuel theft, and illegal gun rackets. Today, the cartel is a shadow of its former self, but at one point they controlled more territory than the infamous Sinaloa Cartel. Los Zetas were founded in the late 90s when a group of ex-Special Forces commandos were hired to work as bodyguards for Osiel Cardenas Guillen, the new leader of the Gulf Cartel. What started off as just a highly effective strike force branched off into its own organization when Guillen was extradited in 2007. The 31 men that made up the team decided to seize the means of production in their boss's absence and take over business operations themselves. When they broke away from the Gulf Cartel, they called themselves Los Zetas, or the Z's. This name came from their first commander, Arturo Guzman de Sena, a Mexican Special Forces officer with the radio code Z1. Los Zetas were infamous for their brutality, with members known to kill indiscriminately and violently torture anyone they felt needed to be made an example. At their peak of operations, even the other cartels thought their methods were overkill, and because of their shared military background, their activities were difficult to disrupt. Most of the members had gone through some level of counterinsurgency training. They also had friends in high places. 3 former governors of the state of Tamaulipas have been accused of having close ties with Los Zetas. In 2020, the Attorney General of Veracruz admitted that her cousin, Guadalupe Hernandez Hervez, was actually the chief of operations for Los Zetas. In the early 2010s, Los Zetas were Mexico's largest cartel by territory. But by 2015, the group, at least in its original form, was considered defunct, torn apart by brutal infighting. Most of the original 31 members are either dead or in jail, and the remaining members have split into 3 smaller groups: Bravo Group, Los Talibanes, and the Old School Zetas. They still maintain some influence in their more fractured form, both in Mexico and overseas. Increasingly, that influence is gained through prisons, especially in the USA and Guatemala. Basically, imprisoned Los Zetas members are able to recreate the system of their cartel by recruiting other inmates while still inside. But if the Zetas are on the downslope, our next guys are only getting more powerful. Number 4. Next up, we're returning to Hong Kong to meet the Yee On, another triad syndicate, and by most estimates, the biggest. Their city comes from the old name for the city of Chaozhou, China, where the group was founded in 1919. They also go by the New Righteousness and Peace Commercial and Industrial Guild, presumably because Legitimate Businessmen Social Club was already taken. Through the Chinese diaspora, Yee On has spread all over the world. As with other triads, Yee On can trace their lineage back to the 1700s. And much like the Camorra in Naples, they got a big boost during World War II. During the war, they cooperated with the occupying Japanese forces, and post-war they took control of the importation and distribution of rice. And as you can imagine, this made them a lot of money. But after the People's Republic of China was founded, the new government cracked down hard on organized crime. The triad's leaders scattered, going underground in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau. And while this kept their numbers down in mainland China for a while, the gang flourished in those smaller regions. They have since been able to get back to their roots and regain a foothold in China. As recently as 2012, 102 members of Yee On were arrested during a sting in the city of Shenzhen. The Yee On owe their success to one thing: they run like a business. Unlike other syndicates, there's no talk of honor or respect, only survival and profit by any means necessary. They're even willing to work alongside the government if it means getting ahead of their competition. After Hong Kong was returned to China in 1997, the Yee On struck a deal with Beijing. In exchange for freedom to expand their own operations, they agreed to help keep Taiwanese triads out of Hong Kong. Yee On also keeps detailed recruitment records, with every new member being assigned a number in order to keep them anonymous. The numbers are a code which identifies the region they operate in, their rank, and the boss they answer to. Think of it as being sort of like a zip code for crime. The system helps the head of Yee On easily keep track of membership dues and profits across the many international chapters of the organization. Yee On is a family business, with most of the known dragonheads of the syndicate being descendants of the founder, Hung Chin. But this doesn't mean you have to be a part of the family to join. Many of the new recruits are refugees who struggle to find legitimate work. Yee On's main income streams come from narcotics, with some claims estimating that they control up to 12% of the global heroin trade. But they also trade in counterfeit goods, extortion, online fraud, loan sharking, prostitution, illegal gambling, and the black market exotic animal trade. As for their front businesses, they operate a lot of casinos and nightclubs, especially in and around Macau. And much like other triads, they are deeply involved with the Hong Kong film industry. But that's Macau. And Soviet Russia, the cartel kills you. Oh, wait, no, we might have used that wrong. Number 3. We told you a lot about the Mexican cartels and the Hong Kong triads on this list, but for the next one, let's mix it up a little. These guys are called the Solntsevskaya Bratva, one of the biggest and baddest crime syndicates in the world. Founded in Soviet Russia in the late 1980s, the Bratva was started by Sergei Mikhailov, a waiter who was sent to the Gulag for fraud in 1984. While incarcerated, Mikhailov met members of other established Russian gangs, which gave him the connections that he would need to start his own gang once he was back outside. The gang was based in Mikhailov's home neighborhood of Solntsevo, which is where they got their name. The Bratva saw some early success allying with another gang in their fight against the Chechen mafia, who started moving into their territory. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Bratva were able to use the economic and political chaos to their advantage, gaining huge amounts of influence within the new Russian state. Originally, the Bratva laundered their money through master criminal Semyon Mogilevich, but after a sting operation by the Czech police in 1995, the Bratva changed their methods. Since then, they've been active in the banking sector, which both makes laundering money a lot easier and gets them in closer proximity to the oligarchs. And if you know anything about post-Soviet Russia, then you know that influencing the oligarchs means you can also influence the government. This is a large part of why the Bratva are so successful. A document leaked by WikiLeaks in 2010 claimed that the Bratva operate within Russia under protection of the FSB, Russia's state security agency. The Bratva isn't as decentralized as the Camorra or the 14K, but it's also not as rigid as the Sicilian Mafia or the Yakuza. Instead, it's made up of 10 semi-independent brigades, each largely self-governed but pooling their resources. That common fund is controlled by a 12-person council. The Bratva operate all over the world and trade in drugs, arms dealing, extortion, murder for hire, human trafficking, illegal gambling, and theft. Whereas the triads get their heroin from the Golden Triangle, the Bratva get theirs from Afghanistan. They also work closely with the Colombian cartels to distribute cocaine. In America, the Bratva have the biggest presence in Atlanta, Georgia, and the cities of Rochester and Syracuse in upstate New York. The Atlanta Bratva especially have been able to evade prosecution for 20 years under the control of ruthless crime boss Mikhail Odenusa. They are not only a big gang in terms of size and influence, they're also theorized to be one of the richest syndicates out there. In 2014, Yahoo Finance made the claim that the Bratva has a yearly revenue of $8.5 billion, but they don't have anywhere near the infamy of this next cartel. Number 2. The Sinaloa Cartel, sometimes also called the Pacific Cartel, is considered one of the most powerful criminal syndicates on the earth. In 2014, Fortune magazine estimated that the Sinaloa Cartel's annual revenue is upwards of $3 billion, and that's a conservative estimate. While other syndicates have diversified, the Sinaloa Cartel proves you can get by just doing one thing really well, even when that one thing is running drugs. If you can think of a drug, the Sinaloa Cartel can smuggle it. Marijuana, meth, heroin, cocaine, counterfeit oxycodone, even multicolored rainbow fentanyl. They've been able to smuggle drugs into the United States since the 1960s, and they pioneered the use of aircraft to do so. Other than consistency, the main thing that makes the Sinaloa Cartel so powerful is how they are organized. Unlike a lot of criminal gangs, the Sinaloa Cartel have a horizontal system of organization rather than a top-down hierarchy. Even though most members of the Sinaloa Cartel are tied to the organization by blood relations, the cartel is still largely decentralized. That makes it easy for the cartel to expand to new markets, and if a high-ranking boss is killed or jailed, his lieutenants have the tools and knowledge to keep the operations running on their own. The Sinaloa Cartel also has a lot of powerful allies. In addition to alleged collusion with both Mexican and U.S. federal forces, the cartel has forged global alliances with groups like the Irish Mob, Cosa Nostra, the Hells Angels, and the Albanian and Romanian mafias. They also work with the 14K, who provide them with the lab chemicals needed to produce methamphetamines and fentanyl. Thanks to the ongoing opioid crisis, those synthetic drugs have started to replace cocaine and marijuana as the big-ticket moneymakers. Within Mexico and Latin America, the Sinaloa Cartel have a kinda off-again, on-again alliance with the Gulf Cartel, as well as Colombian paramilitary groups like the National Liberation Army. And now, we have reached the most dangerous cartel in the world. Number 1. The 6th Yamaguchi-gumi began as a dock workers' union in post-war Kobe and grew into Japan's most powerful crime syndicate. According to Japan's National Police Agency, there are 3,300 active members of the Yamaguchi-gumi, but there could be as many as 3,600 more partial members as well. Unlike other gangs that we've talked about, Yakuza gangs like the Yamaguchi-gumi still have a strict hierarchy, with a boss at the top, who all the other members report up the chain to. The organization was founded by Harukichi Yamaguchi, but its current boss is a man named Shinobu Tsukasa, who has an expansionist approach to his criminal business. Under Tsukasa's leadership, the gang has tried to establish itself in Tokyo, a move which would have been unheard of in previous generations. The Yamaguchi-gumi are one of the richest gangs in the world, with an estimated revenue of $6.6 billion per year. They make most of their money from drug trafficking, with the other activities including illegal gambling, extortion, arms dealing, kickback schemes, prostitution, and stock market manipulation. And despite an internal split in 2015, the Yamaguchi-gumi are still going strong. The secret to their success is all to do with image. In addition to their illicit activities, the Yamaguchi-gumi run successful charitable organizations that have been involved in disaster relief efforts following the 2011 earthquake. So despite all the crime and violence, they're actually pretty well liked as far as Yakuza gangs go. Cartels might be ruthless killing machines, but even they don't always get their way. Watch times cartels messed with the wrong people to see what happens when the tables turn, or click on this video instead.